Converse, inverse, and contrapositive statements in geometry. Recall conditional statements. If it rains, then I'll bring my umbrella. Introducing the converse. A conditional says, if P, then Q. The converse of that would be, if Q, then P. An example of a conditional is, if it rains, then the ground is wet. An example of that conditional's converse is, if the ground is wet, then it rained. The converse of a conditional statement is formed by reversing the hypothesis and the conclusion. You switch the if and then parts. Identify the converse. A conditional statement is, if an angle is a right angle, then it measures 90 degrees. Its converse would be, if an angle measures 90 degrees, then it is a right angle. Notice that we flip the order. Now the conclusion becomes the hypothesis, and the hypothesis becomes the conclusion. Introducing the inverse. A conditional statement is, if P, then Q. Its inverse would be, if not P, then not Q. An example of a conditional statement is, if it rains, then the ground is wet. An example of that conditional's inverse is, if it does not rain, then the ground is not wet. The inverse of a conditional statement is formed by negating both parts, adding the word not to the hypothesis and the conclusion. Identify the inverse. A conditional statement is, if a number is even, then it is divisible by 2. The inverse of that statement would be, if a number is not even, then it is not divisible by 2. In this example, both parts have been made negative. Introducing the contrapositive. A conditional statement is, if P, then Q. Its contrapositive would be, if not Q, then not P. An example of a conditional statement is, if it rains, then the ground is wet. An example of the contrapositive to that conditional is, if the ground is not wet, then it did not rain. There's one more related form called the contrapositive. It's the converse of the inverse. You both negate and switch the parts. Identify the contrapositive. A conditional statement is, if a person is a good driver, then they follow traffic laws. The contrapositive says, if a person does not follow traffic laws, then they are not a good driver. In this example, both parts have been made negative, and the hypothesis and conclusion were switched. Practice time! A conditional statement is, if you have a test tomorrow, then you will study tonight. Pause the video and write the converse, inverse, and contrapositive. Practice time! The conditional statement was, if you have a test tomorrow, then you will study tonight. Here are the answers. The converse would be, if you study tonight, then you have a test tomorrow. The inverse would be, if you don't have a test tomorrow, then you won't study tonight. And the contrapositive is, if you don't study tonight, then you don't have a test tomorrow. Review and wrap up. Recap. For the converse, switch P and Q. For the inverse, negate P and Q. For the contrapositive, switch and negate. Now you know how conditional statements can be changed and how each new form tells us something different.
Created using Powtoon.